Come on. Oh, my word. That was amazing. Thanks to you, I got a new thing started. You know, we're still standing, right? We've had a few years. We've all gone through a difficult season, and we're here. And what doesn't kill you, it does make you stronger. That's what we're going to be talking about this weekend. So excited to have you with us this weekend. And we're coming together this weekend. We're coming together as one church, as one team, one man, one woman, all together in the name of love. And it's going to be really, really exciting as we're choosing today, you know, how we're going to go forward. Are we going to be a part of what God's doing and wants to continue to do in us, but also through us? So that's why we're here today. Really excited you're here today. My name's Curt, and if we haven't had a chance to meet, it's great to meet you. And if you're here for the first time today, we hope this is the first of many times joining us here at Crosspoint. And for those of you tuning in online, man, let's make some noise for those in the online spaces. Man, so excited to have you join us from wherever you're tuning in from. We want you to feel the excitement of what's happening here and to know that you're a part of this. And so in the room here, I want to go ahead and ask you to go ahead and take out your commitment envelope as well as your volunteer card and take your pen. We're going to do some logistics here. If you're in the online spaces, you can receive this card. It's going to come as one form, and you can text the keyword renew to 317-834-7373. It's on the screen right there, and you can use the QR code as well. But go ahead and open this form up, and all of us together, what we're going to do is we're not going to think about things anymore. We're not going to pray about things. We're actually going to do things. That's what we're going to be doing this weekend. And so I want you to begin by just filling out the logistics on here. All right, this doesn't commit you to anything. You don't even have to turn this in, but I want us to get the logistics out of the way. So on the digital form online, you can begin to fill out your name, your email address, best phone number. In the room, go ahead and fill out your name, your mailing address, your best phone number, best email address. Just get the logistics here out of the way, both on the commitment card envelope as well as on the volunteer card. Again, in the online spaces, you have one form that you're going to be responding on both of these for. So this is what we are here for today. And if you're brand new today, you're probably going, oh my gosh, my face is melting off of me right now. You probably wondered what in the world you've walked into today. Let me just tell you, you've walked into something amazing. That's what you've walked into. We are at the end of a 5-week initiative, really the beginning of walking this thing out. And God's been renewing us. He's been renewing our hearts, our lives, our relationships. And as a result, we're more and more in tune with His heart, and we want to renew ourselves to God's mission and purposes. And so today is kind of the climax of these last 5 weeks. And today we're going to make financial commitments, a 3-year commitment, a one-time gift through these forms and this envelope. And we're going to commit our time to serving others. And we're going to talk more about that here in a moment. Before we do anything else, let me pray for us. Heavenly Father, thank you for today. Thank you for such a time as this. And I just pray that you would encourage us today. You've enlisted us. You are enlisting us, and you've invited us to join you in the work that you're doing. And so I just pray that you would do something in us. I pray that every single one of us would experience something special today. I pray that we would hear from you. I pray that we would respond and we would follow through. And God, we just pray these things according to your character and according to your reputation. Amen. Amen. You know, we've been saying that Crosspoint is at a crossroads. And that means that, you know, we're going to have a decision to make in terms of how we're going to go. And I'm going to tell you what, today, we're going forward. That's what we're going to do. Now, I want you to hear a little encouragement from a guy, because we're going to bring all kinds of, you know, pieces to you today, just trying to encourage you and trying to build you up. This is a little pep talk from one of America's favorite coaches. Take a look.
Hey. Sit down, listen.
Got ourselves a tie game. Nice work. Fellas, we're broken. We need to change. And look, I know change can be scary. 1 minute, you're playing freeze tag out there at recess with all your buddies. Next thing you know, you're getting zits, your voice gets low. And every time your art teacher, Miss Scanlon, leans over your desk to check and see how your project's going, you feel all squiggly inside. She was a striking woman. Not classically beautiful, but striking. First time I ever saw tan lines. Most of the time, change is a good thing. Now, I think that's what it's all about. Embracing change. Being brave. Doing whatever you have to so that everyone in your life can move forward theirs. 'Cause maybe it's the only way you can truly help her be happy. Obviously, by her, I'm referring to Lady Football.
Good save.
Sam, we're going to shift you to midfield for the second half. And Beard's going to walk y'all through the rest of the changes. Oh, hey, one last thing. And I want everyone's eyes on me when I say this. Look at me.
Man, why is that so inspiring? Why does that just kind of move us? You know, he said, hey, we're broken. We need to change. I mean, they're at a crossroads. Lasso's team is at a crossroads, and I just think there's something powerful that happens when we come together and we begin to say, okay, we were made for something more. And we see our best days are ahead of us. We see God is actually inviting us into the future, and he actually wants to include us in the future. That's what we're going to be talking about today. You know, one of my favorite Old Testament heroes, again, especially as a boy, and probably because I first came in encounter with him when he was a boy, it was this little guy, shepherd boy, King David. He wasn't a king at the time, but David, he knew that there were times to go big. And, you know, big like swinging a rock, you know, take off the head of a giant. Big like, you know, choosing different weapons to you know, allow his people to move forward. Big like, you know, defeating that giant to allow God's movement to continue to go forward into the future. And, you know, as I think about Crosspoint, I mean, sometimes we're seen as a Goliath. You know, we're seen as, oh, we're kind of a bigger church. And you know, in the span of all the churches, we're not that big. We're just a little David. That's all we are. I mean, especially when it comes to some of the issues, things that are in the community that we continue to come against. I mean, you know, people being in spiritual bondage, you know, hundreds, thousands of people right around us right now that, you know, have no affiliation with any church, any life-giving place where they can learn about Jesus, that are actually probably leaning away. I mean, people that need a place like Crosspoint where, you know, there's dim lights and, you know, you can belong regardless of your background or your race or your ethnicity or your, you know, sexual identity or sexual orientation, your gender identity. You know, even a place where it's okay to not have it all together, myself included. Everybody needs a place like that. And so we're going to fund that today. We're going to be a part of saying, okay, how can I be enlisted in moving this thing forward? Now, one of the really kind of cool things about David was that he was a great warrior. I mean, phenomenal warrior, but he was also a great worshiper. And, you know, David had a lot of amazing moments of just like sinfulness. I mean, just complete brokenness, complete hardness of heart, rebelliousness. And yet at the same time, he had a heart that God said was actually after his own heart. And David had this ability to return to God even after some of his worst moments. And so he had this like tender inner core, but he also had this like rough, abrasive outward, you know, masculinity. And there was this one moment where David was really wanting to worship God. He's wanting to connect with his heavenly Father. And as a king, he goes to this guy who has some land. He's kind of walking across his territory. And he wants to set an altar up on this guy's land and make a sacrifice, because that's kind of what the religions did in the day. The Old Testament wasn't much different. There were sacrifices as a way to remind us that, okay, this animal is going to kind of take the wrath for my sin, so I'm not the one that has to give my life. God's mercy actually flows to me when I make a sacrifice, and David wants to do this. And so there's a guy by the name of Araunah who owns this property that he's on. And he's just honored that the king actually like is on his land. And he says, oh, it would be my honor to give you an animal so you can do a sacrifice, David. And here's what it says in 2 Samuel. It says, but the king said to Araunah, no, but I will buy it from you for a price. I will not offer burnt offerings to the Lord my God that cost me nothing. See, that's kind of the normal way that life is lived, is when we can go, okay, something really needs to be done and somebody else is going to do it or somebody else is going to pay for it. Man, that's awesome. That's awesome. It's great. I don't have to get involved. I can have my cake and I can eat it too, and I don't have to lose anything or invest anything. That's kind of the normal way life is played. You know, the normal way life is played is, let me just see if somebody else will do it. People who are worshiping God, people who are part of the kingdom operate differently. David right here, he goes, oh, no. This is personal for me. All right, I'm not going to let you do that. This isn't just about allowing somebody to do something for me that I want to have happen. He says, no, this has to cost me a bit. He says, if I'm going to change, if I'm going to experience change, as Coach Lasso just talked about, I'm going to have some investment in this. You know, there are many people that I run into across our community that are not attracted to churches. And especially people who are leaning away, they're just not warm to God. And part of it is because they see church as a passive place. And today, we are choosing the path of aggression. That's what we're going to be doing. And it was interesting because we're generally, probably many of us are aggressive people, especially when, but we're not aggressive when it comes to our generosity or our sacrifice. We're aggressive with our saving. We're aggressive with our spending, with our upgrading all of our things. We're aggressive in, making sure our kids have all their sports and initiatives and travel, sports funded. We're very aggressive in those things. But today, we have the opportunity for the first time, perhaps, to worship with an intensity that only comes when you have an aggressive sacrifice. When we encounter someone that has an aggressive sacrifice, man, I get moved. I mean, I get challenged. It actually really encourages me. In fact, I want to show you the story of somebody here at Crosspoint that's here because we've been aggressive. And this is somebody who not only is here now, but they're actually a part of taking what happens here and taking it into the online spaces because they want their friends to experience the same things that she has. And when I hear the story, I am so encouraged, and I hope you're encouraged by it as well.
So Crosspoint is literally in our backyard. And every week we would hear the band rehearsing on Wednesdays, we would hear rehearsal and service on Thursdays, and then every Sunday morning I would hear the rehearsal and both services on Sunday. And so it's just like a constant weekly noise multiple days of the week. And at first it was kind of annoying just because I'm not a morning person, and being waken up on Sunday morning with a lot of noise going on is, before you've had your cup of coffee, it's just like not my thing. But as time went on, I got used to it, and in the back of my head, every time I would hear the noise, I was like, oh, these guys like to have a party every week. This is new for me. And over time, as I got used to it, there were a couple of events that happened that really just kind of drew me to Crosspoint, and I think most of them were revolving around game day. I think it was the week of game day, the fire alarm went off during service, and we were both home, and we cracked the window open in our bedroom to hear what was going on and keep an eye on and see how many firefighters were coming in and out of the building to make sure everyone was okay. And then it must have been that following Sunday, which was game day, I woke up and I noticed the music was a lot louder than usual. And I could see people out in the parking lot, dancing. They looked like they were laughing. Their body language was just so happy. And as I went downstairs to let my dog out, I thought I could recognize a song that was playing, but I didn't know exactly what it was until I opened up the door and heard the Cupid Shuffle playing. And in my head, I was like, the Cupid Shuffle and church just do not go together. That was mind-blowing for me, and I even took a video of it and sent it to my friends and was like, I knew that these guys were having a constant party over here, but this is not what I expected to hear this morning. And over the course of the next 2 weeks, I got more curious about Crosspoint. I looked up the website. So I had been watching online for a couple of weeks, and I decided to fill out the connection card. And immediately, this was the first time I filled out my connection card, but I knew that I wanted to volunteer on the camera team. If anything, it would give me something to do and help me connect with others in my community, because I was new here, brand new. I knew nobody besides family, pretty much. And within a couple of days, I was asked to be here on a Thursday for rehearsal. And initially, I was so scared. And looking back on it, it's funny to me how scared I was walking into Crosspoint. But everyone welcomed me with open arms. They talked to me like I wasn't just some random person off the street. They just talked to me in such a friendly, welcoming manner, and it just felt like a warm hug. I remember standing at the camera being like, I don't do this kind of stuff. I do MMA for a living. I don't do music video style, but I was like, okay, I'll try my best. And it was so much fun, actually. There was such good energy, and there always is during rehearsal and during service. it just kind of drew me in. It just kind of kept me wanting to come back, and over time it became the highlight of my week. So Crosspoint has helped me kind of renew my relationship with God. Because I had so many bad experiences, I just kind of isolated. I've always wanted to follow. It was just I never had the community that felt right for me. And so being at Crosspoint, it has kind of renewed my faith, not only in the church, but also helped my relationship with God grow so much stronger. And it's brought so much joy to my life. When I talk to my parents, my dad will look at me and tell me, I can tell that you've been going to church because I can see the joy of God in your eyes. I can see it in your face. And even within the past 2 months, I've had like stress with work and whatnot and in life. And I found that in those really stressful moments, I now find a place to like clear my mind, and I just pray. And I just kind of spill it all out, just like everything that's on my mind, everything that's weighing me down, just like give it all to God and just like tell him how I'm feeling and just ask him like, if this is what you want me to be doing, please be with me. Please show me that I'm on the right path. Please show me that I'm following what you want me to follow for you. And I've realized, it's only been within the past like 4 weeks, I guess you would say, that I've realized that God led me to Crosspoint for a reason, and it was to give me the community that I was missing when I moved here. And through that community, I've just feel like I'm growing so much closer to God. I just feel like everything that's led up to this moment has been for a reason. Even if at the time I didn't understand it, it's been for a reason. And it's led me to where I am today. And I might have my bad moments, but I found myself, once I kind of get it all out of my system, just thanking God for all the small joys in my life. And I thank him for giving me Crosspoint in my backyard, for leading me to Fishers, even though that was a really tough move, for even leading me to the career I have now. I just find myself waking up and thanking God every day for what I have and the moments of joy in life.
Wow, let's thank Julia for her story, man. So cool. And you know, that's why we do what we do. I mean, it's so people can experience what she's experiencing. You know, some of us here today, we're going to write all kinds of different numbers on these envelopes, on this, you know, type them in on this digital, you know, commitment card. And, you know, as we think about this, I want us to understand the normal way to look at this is that when we look at things, it's all about the amount. It's about the amount. I mean, the amount really tells me, you know, man, I'm really significant. I can do something, you know, kind of significant here. But you just, you know, that's not the way it works here. In fact, it's not the amount. It's actually the cost. And this is how the kingdom of God works. In fact, it's possible that someone may have a relatively low amount that they put in this commitment card, and that actually may be a cost that's higher and actually even more pleasing to God. In fact, one of the best ways this is illustrated is in a story that Jesus, we capture it from Jesus' life. It's in a setting just like this. He's sitting, and he's watching people put something in this box. This right here, by the way, is our original Joy Box. How about that? This is a Joy Box. If you were at the school with us in the early days, this was between the doors every single week. It was a single one. We now have like 4 of them, you know, at each door. You can go online. I mean, but this was the original. It's a box just like this. And Jesus is watching people approach this box. And here's what the writer Mark, here's what he tells us. He says, as he sat down opposite the treasury and watched the people putting money into the joy box, many rich people put in large sums, and a poor widow came and put in 2 small copper coins, which make a penny. So she just dropped them in. And as he called his disciples to him, he said to them, truly I say to you, this poor widow has put in more than all of those who are contributing to the offering box, the joy box. For they all contributed out of their abundance, but she gave out of her poverty and has put in everything she had, all she had to live on. You know, he looks at people putting in high amounts based on how they're dressed. They look like they're pretty well off. And then he sees this woman who puts in a very small amount. He doesn't know that because she looks haggardly in her dress. He knows it because he can see the 2 copper coins. He hears them drop in and hit the bottom. And he sees that, and he doesn't make some big teaching moment out of it. Instead, he wants to model and communicate to his followers something. He says, hey, come around. And he kind of gathers down with them. He says, hey, listen, I want to tell you something about what I just saw right here and what just happened. He said, this woman in God's eyes, she actually gave more. She gave more. See, it's not about the amount, it's about the cost. And today, we have the opportunity to express an act of worship. That's what we're doing. And we can think of it in a way of saying, okay, if I'm going to financially make a commitment, what's that going to fund? What are all the things that's going to do? We can say, okay, with my time in serving, if I'm on a team or if I'm going to join a volunteer team, how's that going to, fuel, with time and talent, Crosspoint going forward? But there's another way to think about what we're doing. And the focus today is, what does this say about my heart? Because see, that's what Jesus was getting to with this story right here. And see, is this an aggressive act of sacrifice that says, okay, God, I want to be enlisted? Because that's what this woman did. When he saw her drop this stuff into this box, he goes, oh, that's somebody who's a part of what I'm doing right there. And when you and I do this, we're mirroring the very life of Jesus when we do this. In fact, the Apostle Paul, he writes more than half of the New Testament. We talk about him all the time. He's somebody who's trying to help new Christians all around the Mediterranean Rim in the first century understand what it means to follow Jesus. And he's kind of new to the whole thing, too. He originally wasn't a follower, and then he changed his mind, began to follow Jesus. Now he's helping others. And he says this to this group of people. He says, for you know that the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though he was rich, yet for your sake he became poor, so that you by his poverty might become rich. You know what this is saying right here? This is saying that Jesus did not come into existence when he popped out of Mary's birth canal on what we celebrate as Christmas, right? I mean, that's when we celebrate it. That's when we celebrate him coming in the form of flesh, in form of flesh and love, kind of crashing into the world. But what the New Testament writers are saying right here is Jesus existed way before that. He's always been God. He's always been at the foundation of God since the beginning of eternity. And so this verse says he was rich, and he was high and lifted up. Now, I don't know what that means. I don't know in the heavenlies where he was hanging out. I don't know if he was eating grapes every day, if somebody's fanning him with one of those big leaves, I don't know if the angels were just keeping him cool, or if he was, watching, Ted Lasso season 3, episode 4 before it came out. I don't know. I mean, he had access to whatever he wanted. All that we know is that Jesus in this moment, he models sacrifice for us. God models sacrifice, and he chooses to live on less, and he goes into what's called voluntary downward mobility. Think about this. Nobody ever goes into voluntary downward mobility. I mean, you only do that when you're forced to do it. Why does Jesus do this? See, God models for us that you and I, we actually can be rich. We actually are rich because Jesus chose to go into poverty on our behalf. And because of that, guess what? You and I were spiritually rich. In reality, guess what? I should have been the one that was slain. I should have been the one that was on that cross. I should have been the one that had those stakes, piercing through my wrists and my feet. I should have been on that altar. I mean, Jesus comes as a perfect sacrifice, a perfect lamb, and he dies for me. He goes poor so I can become rich, so you can become rich. He doesn't write a check. I mean, he actually bleeds for you and I. All right, he's bleeding so that you and I can be spiritually rich. He goes down, 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 so you and I can go up, up, up. It's one of the reasons that, as you heard a bit ago, we're going to have baptisms as a part of our celebration here in a few weeks, April 13 and 16. And perhaps for you, part of the renewing journey is taking the step of water baptism. It's connecting with that reality that Jesus actually did something. And when I'm connected with him, when I receive him, it actually is a reminder that I'm where I am because of his grace. That's what baptism is. It's simply an outward expression of saying, yeah, I've chose to follow Jesus. I've chose to connect with Jesus. He's my Savior. And I want to symbolize, I want to have a moment with the stake in the ground moment where I remember what it's like to be wet, what it's like to have that cleansing water go over me that reminds me that it's only because of Jesus that I'm here. This is one of the powerful, powerful next steps in our faith. Perhaps, this weekend is a weekend where you want to take that step. I mean, you can let us know. We've got info meetings after each service online. You can let us know on your connection card. We'll connect with you. It's a powerful, powerful moment. So today, if we want to walk like Jesus, we want that kind of power coursing through our veins. I mean, same power that raised him from the dead, renewing our lives, renewing the dead places in our lives, then, it means every once in a while we got to bleed. That's what it means. In fact, I've kind of discovered over the years, I don't know if you've had moments like this where I'm like, there's certain things that I believe that aren't accurate. When I find them, when I stumble on them, I go, oh my gosh, I need to change that. That is not accurate. And part of, me knowing, in fact, I'll give you one right here. Part of me knowing this is, there were things I was taught early on in my following of Jesus, in my early days of faith, where people would always talk about, finding a peace. You got a big decision to make, and they're like, man, have you found a peace in that yet? Have you been praying and found a peace? And I was like always waiting for this peace to come every time I faced something big. And I just discovered there were a lot of things that I never took the step in because I was waiting around to find a peace. I was waiting around to find a peace over it, and I'm like, I don't know. Apparently I'm not doing the right thing. And so what I did was I just kind of decided to go to the source. I went to the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the 4 Gospel writers. And instead of just blindly following all these other people say, hey, you got to find a peace, I'm like, let me see if that's really accurate in what Jesus does and says. And I started reading the Gospel accounts. It's like, oh my goodness. From the beginning to the end, there's no peace when people are taking steps to follow Jesus. There's not peace in that. In fact, let's just start with Jesus for a moment. Let's think about, the week where he's, kind of heading toward the cross. He's in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he is praying, and this is the week where he's about to get nailed, about to have stakes go through his arms onto this wooden cross. And you know what he's doing in the Garden of Gethsemane? He is sweating blood. He's sweating drops of blood. Guess what? You only do that when you are under immense stress. Your body only does that when you are experiencing incredible, incredible stress. And yet in that moment, he says a prayer, and a couple of the writers that bring us the Gospels are there. They're recording this. And he just says, Father, I do not want to do this. I do not want to go through this at all, but not my will, Father. I want what you want to be done. See, imitating Jesus means that there are times where I have to sacrifice and bleed. Not all the time. This is why Jesus is such a conundrum. This is why Jesus is he is such a beautiful person, because see, you can't just say, well, you always got to give up everything. There's always a cost. That's a part of it. It's one side. But then you also have this extravagance that he brings. Think about the very first miracle that Jesus did. His very first miracle was turning what? Water into some great vino, right? He wasn't even ready to do this. And his mom comes in and she's like, man, Jesus, you got to keep this party rolling. They ran out of the wine. And he's like, Mom, I'm not ready yet. It's not my time. And then he decides to do it anyway. And he brings out the best vino they have ever tasted so that party could go on for a number of more days. He was all about that. He was hanging out with people who throw parties. He hung out with people who threw banquets. All right, and he was comfortable with people that had means. All right, he was clear. He's like, hey, I'm sorry, you can get to heaven. It's not that you can't get to heaven if you have means. He was very curt with them and saying, hey, there's certain things that are going to get in the way, and you've got to make sure that I'm the chief affection of your heart. But he was very comfortable with people that had a lot of jack. He enjoyed that. So that was a part of the extravagance. But today we're looking at sacrifice. Some of us today, if you call Crosspoint home, and we're asking you to consider, okay, what is it that God's calling me to bring that's going to cause me to bleed a bit? I'm going to perhaps, voluntarily lay some stuff down in order to reinvest that towards something that I love more, which is being closer to Jesus and more part of his mission. fact, again, the Apostle Paul, in this second letter he writes to these new Christians in Corinth, he says, this is the point. He says, whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly. Whoever sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. Each one must give as he has decided in his heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. Let me break this down for a moment right here. What he's basically saying is, first, for me to get more, I've got to give more. I've got a friend who has this great phrase. He's always like, you got to participate in your own rescue. And you've heard it from this stage. You got to participate in your own rescue. If you want to experience more, it's going to require something of us. And he's not talking about necessarily financial remuneration. All right, he's not doing the whole televangelist, bastardizing the message of Jesus kind of thing, where he's like, if you want to be blessed, you got to give and be blessed. He's not doing that at all. All right, that's not at all what he's talking about. He's not talking about, hey, if you give more, you're going to get a better paycheck and a bigger paycheck. He's not saying that at all. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. There are times where I don't fully get it. When we're generous, God has a boomerang effect where things just come back and in some unique, weird way work out in ways that are unexpected for us. It just happened this week. It's crazy. I don't fully explain it. Can't fully explain it, but that's not what he's talking about here. He's talking about there are things that I get when I sacrifice and I imitate Jesus. That when I sow seed generously, then there are certain things I gain. I'm more intimate with Jesus. I'm closer and closer with the heartbeat of what his heartbeat is beating after. And I just know for some of us, we've been realizing, man, I'm capped out spiritually. I'm capped out on my spiritual formation. I'm just not really sensing God. I'm just kind of capped out. And perhaps, you just maybe need to consider that, maybe it's because you've stopped sowing seed. Perhaps you stopped identifying and imitating Jesus. I ran into this great phrase just this week from C.J. Neal, who's the Indianapolis city leader for Cru Ministries. And he said this. He said, discipleship, which is, growing spiritually, building ourselves up, being built up so we follow Jesus better. He says, discipleship without evangelism is that we're here really for the benefit of other people. How do we encourage others that don't know Jesus so they can come to experience Jesus the way we've come to experience Jesus? Discipleship without evangelism is just counseling. Just counseling, that's all it is. See, Paul, he says, you want to be a part of what I'm doing, what God's doing, it's going to require something. And then he goes on, he says this, he says, each one must give as he has decided in his heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion. Which it's kind of cool that in the 16 years of Crosspoint's history, every time we come to this moment, it's pretty cool that I can say, we have a 16-year track record of doing what we say. We have a 16-year track record of having an integrity on this. If you think back over the last 5 weeks, we've been very clear. We're not in a fundraising campaign. We're in a renewing campaign. There always is a financial aspect to that, but we're not putting some thermometer on the wall. We're not, raising the thermometer where it's like, all right, you got to do more. All right, everybody's got to, ratchet down and build up. And we didn't do any of that. There's no calls going out. There's no emails saying, hey, here's your number. All right, here's what you're expected to do. Here's your fair share. We just don't do that. And let me tell you why we don't do that. Because if we did do that, one, we want you to hear from God. We want you to see God's heart. Say, okay, God, what do you want me to do in this? But if we did say, hey, here's your part, you would end up coming to a day like today reluctantly and under compulsion. And let me tell you something, nobody's doing that. Nobody's going to commit today out of reluctance or out of being repulsed. I don't even know that. Is that a word, repulsed? I don't even know if that's a word. We're not going to be repulsed in this. We're going to give because we choose the way of Jesus and the way of sacrifice today. And I'm telling you, when you do this, it says right here that there's a cheerfulness that comes. A cheerfulness. You know what the word in the Greek language is for cheerful right here? It's actually hilarity. It's like laughing. It's why when we are generous into the joy box, we do that because we like to see our faces, like our muscles cramp up because we're smiling, because we're laughing. We feel the excitement in that. See, that's what we get to do. One of the best ways I can describe what some of us are going to experience over the next few minutes is when you go on a roller coaster, anybody fan of a roller coaster? Any roller coaster fans out there? Yeah. I tell you what, I love roller coasters. I really didn't enjoy the days where I'm standing in Snoopy Land all day long at, Kings Island. I mean, I would rather stand in the parking lot in 100-degree weather than, be spending the day in Snoopy Land. I loved when my kids could start riding these coasters. And they're different today. I mean, they're steel, I don't know. It just doesn't, they go fast, right? But with the litigious, culture we have with attorneys and engineers going over everything with a fine-tooth comb. And listen, you can ride these coasters and you're not even going to, get a hangnail on these things. I mean, that's how safe you are, even though there's a thrill to them. But I tell you what, the first coaster that I ever rode, it was at a Circus World. It was called the Roaring Tiger. Anybody ever been to Circus World? Any Circus World? Oh, a few of you have been there. At the time, it was the world's longest roller coaster. And I remember strapping in. This is it right here. I remember strapping in. And you go down that little hill at first, you're like, woo! And then you hit the big hill where you're starting to go up. And that chain is just like clink, 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 and you're like, oh my gosh, like how far is this going? Man, I thought this was a small hill, but as you're looking up this hill, I mean, it just keeps going, and you're like, oh my word, what am I about to do? And then you break the top, and you're just going like, oh my word, and then you're like down, and that's kind of the noises I make when I'm on the coaster. I don't know if that's what you guys do, but I'm telling you, there was a level of cheerfulness. There was no peace in that moment. I was clenched down. I was like, oh man, oh wow. That's what sacrifice feels like right there. If you've never felt that, you've probably never sacrificed. And as we said, I mean, we're at a crossroads here at Crosspoint. I mean, we could pat ourselves on the back and be like, hey, we're going to stay where we are, keep doing what we're doing, and just be happy. But we're not going to do that. We're going to go through this crossroads. We're going to go forward. We're not stopping. We're not going to look left. We're not going to look right. We're going to go forward. And it's the same way you're at a crossroads right now. See, every single one of us are at a crossroads where you're going to, right now, in a few moments, you're going to have to decide, okay, am I going to have a normal life? Am I going to look left, right, and oh, I can do this, and this looks fun over here, and oh my gosh, I can go there? Or am I going to say, okay, Jesus, I want to be focused on what you're doing. I want to be focused on your mission, what you're doing in me, and how you're involving me in what you're doing, and plow through. This weekend, I began one of my favorite seasons. I'm going to be coaching one of my daughter's sports teams as rec softball begins. And if you've ever had the privilege of coaching one of your kids, you know the angst and the tension that comes with it. It's a lot of fun, but there's an angst in that. Because, my kids will be like, Dad, I just feel like you're harder on me when you coach me. They like me coaching, but they're like, you just push me harder. I'm like, I probably do. I mean, I try to coach every single, player on our team the same. But if I'm honest, I do probably push my kids harder because I pay attention to them. They've always got my eye. Even though I try to pay attention to all the players, for some reason, I pay attention to my daughter more. And when she succeeds in pitching and batting, I feel I'm a part of her success. I mean, we celebrate that because not only have I coached her on the field, but we've worked in the backyard and spent hours just developing. And at the same time, when she struggles, when she's just off her game a bit, man, I feel that too. Because again, we win and we lose together. Just like that, God is a parent and he's a father, and right now, he's got his eye on you. I mean, right now, he's watching you. He's looking in at you right now. And I don't say that to make you, feel guilty or, feel a sense of like condemnation of, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? You know what he's doing? He's actually cheering you on. He's like, listen, you can do this. Son, daughter, listen, I've been preparing for you for this. You can do this. I've been building into you. See, right now, you're at a crossroads, and in a few moments, you're going to decide, am I going to go forward? Or am I going to go left? Am I going to go right? Am I going to pay attention to all the things normal people pay attention to? And I know for some of us, we came in here today, and we're like, man, I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if I'm ready. Your Heavenly Father would say, you're ready. You're ready. You can do this. So today, we're gonna go through the crossroads. Now, there may come a day where Crosspoint's just some large, comfy church. We can just all sit in here, pat ourselves on the back, feel good about what we're doing. Let me tell you something. Today is not that day. There may come a day where, people from other churches come here and sit on the sidelines and try to sneak in the back and just say, oh, this is a place I can just kind of drift in. But today is not that day. There may come a day where we're just all about ourselves and being a holy huddle and never doing things outside of ourselves to impact people like Julia, who comes in because we say we're not just here for ourselves. But guess what? Today is not that day. Today is the day that we're going to declare ourselves, and we're going to come forward. And we're going to say, okay, God, I want to imitate Jesus. I want to do what you've done. I want to choose voluntarily to sacrifice. I want to align my heart with who you are. And I want to bleed a little bit. I want to sacrifice for people that matter to you. That's what we're going to do today. So what I want us to do is I want us to go ahead and take out those cards that we filled out earlier, the volunteer card in the room, the envelope. And for those of you online, again, if you haven't done the digital commitment card and filled out the logistics, everybody just go ahead and do the logistics, the name. And you're going to have a chance to decide here in a moment how this is going to go forward. Now, really kind of quick little story before we do this. I had an interesting conversation with our staff team this week. And they asked a question. They said, Curt, why is it? I mean, I know we're renewing our hearts, but why is it we focus more on the money side during this initiative, like sacrificing and what's God calling me to bring there than the time side? Because they're both very, very important commodities. I'm like, that is a fantastic question. And here's the primary reason why. See, we're trying to get to the root of how our hearts are more oriented around Jesus, and money is the gateway to the heart. This is why we said through this whole series, Jesus talked more about money than anything else because he knew this was the thing that vied for the affections of our hearts toward God. And when we can surrender and go, okay, God, I'm going to take a step into that realm of investing, of relinquishing, of sacrificing, man, everything else flows from there. See, God's doing some heart work right now. And we're going to do both. We're engaged with the envelope financially. We're going to engage with our time. Now, if you're a guest today, let me just tell you, if you're a guest tuning in online, if you're a guest in the room, all I want you to do is the connection card. All right, the QR code on the armrest there, QR code on the screen right now, just fill that out. We hope to see you next weekend. We hope to see you at Easter. Maybe you want to invite somebody to Easter at Cross Point. Perhaps for you it's a day to say, hey, I'm exploring Jesus and I want to take a step of faith. I want to take a step of following Jesus with my life, experiencing that kind of grace that Jesus laid himself down for me so I don't have to. If that's what you want, you can say yes to that today, and you can mark that on your card. We're going to be praying for you, and you can begin a new life that will never stop. And that can begin right here at that moment by simply saying, Jesus, I want that. I want to know that kind of grace in my life. So that's for you. For the rest of us today, I want to show you how we're going to work through this envelope here and these cards here in just a moment. So I want you to kind of go ahead and look at the formula side of the Renew Commitment Card. And online, this is the digital commitment card. And what we're going to ask you to do is, we've asked everybody to consider that calls Crosspoint home, what's the one-time gift I can bring this weekend? All right, what's the one-time financial gift, first fruits offering I can bring this weekend? And you're going to write that in the pink box on the physical card. You're going to put that on the form in the digital card. And then the next box is where we commit above and beyond over the next 3 years. Here's what I have been led and kind of God's prompted me to bring and invest over the next 3 years. And you can write that in the next box and write that total right there. And then you can total those two boxes for the total commitment. And then digitally online, you're going to see the same formula. You can total those two boxes for the total commitment. And then on top of that, if you know how that's going to come in, if it's monthly or annually, you can let us know that. That's helpful to know. And I would highly encourage you consider setting up online giving so it's automated. You don't have to think about it. And you can just continue to say, okay, I know I'm walking out what I've said I'm going to do. It's one of the best ways to fulfill it. So that's how we do this form. Now, if you're online, you also have a volunteer opportunity on the online digital commitment card as well. For those of us in the room, this is the other card, the volunteer opportunities. And let me just say, if you currently volunteer here, all I'm looking at for you is just saying, hey, will I continue doing what I'm doing? And if that's you, I want you to go ahead and just mark, yep, I'm continuing doing what I'm doing. If you're not on a volunteer team right now, let me just say, maybe this is your day. Maybe today's the day. It's not just my resources of finances, but I want to bring my time. Let me tell you, over the last 4 weeks, I've mentioned every week that we've got 25 volunteer roles that are open right now that we need filled in order to just serve the people we have coming each and every weekend. We've had 2 of those taken over the last 2 weeks. We have 23 still open. Maybe today is your opportunity to say, man, I want to fill one of those roles. I want to be a part of helping fuel with my time, whether it's back, people say, where's the greatest need? It's always kids. It's always kids, which might be working in the nursery with infants, preschool, toddler room, teaching the stories of Jesus, being a small group leader in our elementary environment, Area 56, 5th and 6th graders, Crosspoint Student Ministries, 7th through 12th graders, always the greatest need. More than half of those positions, about 2/3, are in kids. If those aren't your areas, maybe it's jumping in a coffee bar or serving at the front doors, but maybe today is your day. Say, hey, put me in, coach. I want to be one of those people. So that's another one of the calls for us to be a part of what God's doing. Now, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you a little space to just go before God one more time. And we're going to have a chance to be silent, just let God speak. Band's going to play a song. And I want to set the stage here before we do anything else. This moment never comes again. All right, these moments right here, these are very rare. It's very rare to say, okay, I get to be a part of what God's doing at the ground floor, and I get to influence the pace at which his kingdom goes forward. Now, the reality is kingdom of God's going forward, whether we choose to participate or not. The invitation is that we get to be a part of it. So I just want to give you one more time to kind of hear from God and just say, okay, God, would you speak to us before we make these commitments? Some of us, as we're sitting here, we're probably feeling the sense of, oh my gosh, I don't know that I have the kind of faith that I'm going to need to walk this out. Let me tell you about the kind of faith you need to walk this out. Jesus had a moment where his kind of inner three, Peter, James, and John, they had this just super real, supernatural experience with Jesus. It's called the Transfiguration, where he kind of reflected the light of God, and they got to see it, and they couldn't even look at it. It was so bright, and he turned. It's almost like he had this interaction with the presence of God, and they were just like, oh my gosh, what was that? It's just an amazing moment. They leave that moment, they go down into the town with Jesus, and right away a man comes up to them that has a son who's demon-possessed, and the dad says, Jesus, son of man, would you please help me? Would you heal my son of this demon possession? He says, I brought my son to your disciples, and they couldn't do it. Pretty sure Jesus is like, what do you mean they couldn't do it? He's like, how long am I going to be with you guys? That's literally what he said. How much longer am I going to put up with you guys? That's what he said right there. And then he healed the man's son, just boom, healed him. And the man and his son went off. And the disciples, they said, Jesus, why were we not able to do that? And here's what Jesus said. He said, because you have so little faith. Let me tell you the kind of faith that we need in moments like that, moments like this. Right after that, he said, truly I tell you, if you have faith as small as a tiny mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. Nothing will be impossible for you. So how much faith does it take to do what we're doing today? Jesus said, if you want to move a mountain, all it takes is faith the size of a mustard seed. That's all you need. And so as you bring your commitment today, as you turn your commitment in online, we're going to ask you in just a moment. In fact, let's go ahead and stand in the room. We're going to have you bring that forward as the band sings, and you can place those together, together, a volunteer card, a financial commitment into this joy box. And we're going to celebrate. You can come as a family, as a couple, individually, however you want to come. And as you come, we're also going to invite you to take a little jar with a mustard seed as a reminder that, hey, this is all the faith it takes. I mean, God just says, hey, will you go with me? It just takes a little bit of faith. And we're going to make our commitments. And if you're online and you're making a digital commitment, we're going to mail these to you. So, just make sure your address is on your card. All right, you guys ready? All right, here we go. The band's going to sing. We're going to respond. You can place, at any point over the next couple songs, you can place your commitment into this box, and you can take with you a seed, a jar to remind you of the faith that